So instead of asking, how do I market for AI think the better question is, am I building a reputation that is clear, that is credible, that is consistent and visible whenever people or technology go looking for someone like me? And this is exactly the work that we do for our clients. We help them get found in these places and build that consistency and that credibility so that professionals become known, trusted, and can ultimately convert that prospect to a client. I'm Sylvia Garibaldi, founder and CEO of a well established marketing training and done for you services company, tailored specifically for the modern legal and financial professional worldwide. While it's taken some trial and error to figure out which methods get the best results for professionals who are looking to grow their practices, fast forward to today, my team and I have nailed down and perfected a process that has helped so many of our clients consistently achieve outstanding results and create a legacy for their practices. I created the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast to give you simple, actionable, non-salesy, and results-driven marketing to grow your legal or financial practice like so many of our clients have. If you're a lawyer, mediator, financial, or divorce professional who is looking to become highly visible and wants to create a practice that makes an impact, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 138 of the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast. I'm your host, Sylvia Garibaldi, and if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast by hitting the follow or subscribe button so that you don't miss future episodes packed with actionable strategies to grow your practice. So today we are wrapping up our 4-part series on the recommendation engines that can help people find you, trust you, and ultimately choose you. And I have to say, I think we've saved the one that is changing the fastest for last, because today, you may have already guessed, we're going to be talking about AI. So if you're a lawyer, mediator, divorce professional, or frankly, anyone responsible for marketing a professional practice, I don't think we can afford to ignore what's happening here because AI is moving incredibly quickly. The way people are using it is changing. The way that these platforms find and use information is continually changing. And the way potential clients research professionals is changing right along with it. Before we get into that, let's quickly look at where we've been in this series. So, in recommendation engine number 1, I talked about your clients, and the question was, will they recommend you? Because in reality, the experience that you create for your clients directly influences what they say about you and whether they tell someone else to call you. Then in recommendation engine number 2, we talked about your professional network, and the question there was, will they think of you and refer you? Because you can know hundreds of professionals, but if they don't understand exactly what you do, trust you, and remember you when that right opportunity comes along, those relationships may never turn into referrals. And last week in recommendation engine number 3, I talked about Google, and the question there was, will people find you when they search? And so I talked about making sure that when someone searches for your name, your service, or the problem that you solve, your expertise is actually visible. So this takes us to today's episode for recommendation engine number 4, and that is AI. And the question here is different because it's no longer only can people find me. I think the question is becoming, does AI know enough about me to include me in the answer? So think about the difference. Someone goes to Google and types Workplace Mediator Chicago. Google gives them a set of results. They start clicking, they visit websites, they compare professionals, they do the research. But now that same person will go into ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, or any other AI platform and ask, I'm an HR executive dealing with serious conflict between 2 senior leaders. I'm looking for an experienced workplace mediator in Chicago who handles these exact types of situations. Who should I consider? So that is a very different experience. Instead of simply being given a list of places to look, what's happening here is the person may receive a synthesized answer. They may receive explanations, suggestions, and in many cases, they're going to receive names as well. So now there's another place where you potentially need to be visible, another place where your expertise needs to be understood, and another recommendation engine that we as marketers and business owners need to start paying attention to. Now, I want to be very clear about something. We all know Google is not disappearing anytime soon. And I'm also not saying that you should stop thinking about SEO. And I'm certainly not saying that everyone is going to start choosing their lawyer, mediator, or divorce professional through ChatGPT tomorrow. That's not the point that I'm trying to emphasize here. The point is that AI has become another layer in which people research, evaluate, and make decisions. So now we need to think about both. Can someone find you on Google? And increasingly, what happens when they ask AI about you? What does AI think you're known for? Does it understand your specialty? Does it understand where you work? And perhaps most importantly, is there enough credible information about you online for AI to connect your name with the actual problems that you solve? Because here's where I think this gets pretty interesting. AI doesn't know what you know simply because you've spent 20 years becoming an expert. It doesn't know about the hundreds of clients that you've helped, and it doesn't know the reputation that you've built behind closed doors. What's happening here is it can only work with the information that exists and information that it can access. And that means that your messaging, your positioning, your presence on social media, your content, your speaking, your podcast appearances, your professional profile directories, and all the things that other credible sources say about you that are taking on a whole new level of importance. And so it's no longer simply about marketing yourself to people. Increasingly, you're also creating a digital body of evidence that helps technology understand who you are and what you're known for. So we're going to unpack exactly what that means today. And we're also going to talk about why your messaging and positioning need to be clearer and more consistent than ever before. We're going to look at some very interesting research about LinkedIn and the role individual professionals, not just company pages, are playing in AI citations. And I'm also going to talk about what I call your AI recommendation footprint. And that's just giving you a simple test that you can do to find out what AI currently understands about you, because this really is not about chasing ChatGPT or any other AI platform. And it's not about trying to game an algorithm, right? It's about recognizing that AI has become another recommendation engine along the ones that we've already discussed, and making sure that as the way that people find professional help continues to change, that you as a professional are changing with it. So let's dive right into this. So I want to start with the biggest change, because for years, when someone needed professional help, they generally had two places to turn. They could ask someone that they trusted for a recommendation, or they could go online and search. But now, as you know, there's a third behavior entering the picture, or has already entered the picture, and that is AI. And I don't mean that they're simply using AI as another version of Google, right? They're having a conversation with it. They can explain their situation. They can add context. They can ask follow-up questions. And they can ask AI to help them narrow down their choices. So think about the difference. On Google, someone might type Workplace Mediator London. But on ChatGPT or any other AI platform, as I mentioned before, they could ask something like, I'm an HR director dealing with serious conflict between two senior executives. We've tried to resolve it internally, and it's not working. What type of professional should I bring in? Is it worth it to bring a professional in? And who would specialize in this kind of situation in London, England? Okay, that's a different kind of search, right? I think you see where I'm going with this. AI now understands much more about the problem that the person is trying to solve. And the person can keep going. They might ask, what should I look for when choosing a mediator? Should I choose someone with experience working with executives? Can you give me some professionals to consider? And suddenly, AI isn't simply helping someone find information. And that's why I believe we need to start thinking about AI as another recommendation engine. Now, I want to be careful here because AI has not replaced Google. In fact, For those of you that are active on Google, you know that Google has created something called AI mode. And that acts like an AI platform like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude. So, what I'm trying to say here is that the current research is suggesting that people are using both, right? They're using Google and they're using AI. In fact, we're seeing people move back and forth between AI, Google, social media, websites, reviews, and any other kind of sources that they can research and find online. But AI has added another door through which a potential client can discover you. And so people are already changing the way they phrase their questions. They're becoming more conversational. They're providing more detail. They're asking more specific questions. And that creates an entirely new challenge for professionals. And with AI, there's another question. How do I become relevant enough to be part of the answer in the first place? And I think that's an important distinction because someone could potentially learn about you through an AI answer before they've ever visited your website. So think about that, right? And before they even looked at your LinkedIn profile, and maybe even before they've ever heard your name. And this is why it matters. So now we have another place where your clients can begin their research. And this other place is where you can bet referral sources are researching you as a professional. And another place where your expertise needs to show up now, right? But before AI could ever mention you, cite you, or potentially recommend you, it has to figure out something first. It has to understand who you are, what you do, and what you're actually known for. So that's where your messaging and positioning becomes much more important than ever, as I mentioned before. So if AI has become another recommendation engine, as we know it has, the next question is, what does AI actually understand about you, the professional? And this is where your messaging and positioning becomes more important than ever, because for years now, inconsistent messaging was mostly seen as a branding problem. Maybe your website described you one way, your LinkedIn profile described you another way, your speaker bio used a completely different language, your association profile used something entirely different. That wasn't ideal, right? But now there's another reason to care about it. And this is what we do with a lot of our clients is we're piecing all of this together because AI is trying to gather all this information about you from across your digital footprint. And if all of those places are telling a different story, which is what we see often with a lot of the professionals that start working with us, here's the reality. It just becomes much harder to understand what you actually want to be known for. And when that happens, that's when it's much more difficult to be picked up through those AI platforms. So that's the rationale there. So let me give you a quick example. And this is an example that I see with the professionals that I work with. So imagine one professional whose website says family lawyer and mediator. And then their LinkedIn profile says lawyer, mediator, arbitrator, and parenting coordinator. Okay, this is like a real example I'm giving you. So their association profile calls them an ADR professional. And then their content covers everything from divorce to estates to arbitration to workplace conflict. Let me tell you, that is certainly a lot of information about that person online. But what's the clear association? What should their name be connected with? Now, compare that with someone whose digital presence or online presence consistently reinforces a main theme, such as workplace mediator specializing in executive and organizational conflict. Their website communicates that. Their social media platforms reinforce that. Their articles and blogs talk about that. Their speaking appearances reinforces that. Their professional bios say, approximately the same thing. So what's happening here is that you're getting a much clearer picture. And I want to make an important point here. I'm not saying that you need to use exactly the same sentence everywhere because you don't. But the story does need to be consistent. The language needs to point in the same direction. Because if you want to become known for workplace mediation, but half of your online footprint is talking about something completely different, what you're doing is simply creating mixed signals. And as I mentioned before, mixed signals makes it very difficult for AI to understand what you do and to actually cite you as a resource in its AI platform. Very simply said. Okay. So LinkedIn interestingly enough, recently published research on AI visibility that makes this point very clearly. And so their guidance is to use consistent terminology across your content because when you repeatedly use the same category names and descriptions, AI can build a stronger association between your name or brand and that area of expertise. And that is significant because it means positioning is no longer just about helping people understand you. And it's increasingly about helping technology understand what you do. So I want you to ask yourself three questions. First, what do I want to be known for? Second, what three or four problems do I most want associated with my name and brand? And third, if someone looked across my website, my social media profiles, and all those other things online, would they hear essentially the same story? And if the answer is no, then something's worth fixing for sure because your digital footprint shouldn't tell 10 different stories about you. It should reinforce one clear story from 10 different places. Okay? I hope that's making sense. And one of the most important places where that story now lives is on LinkedIn. In fact, some of the newest research around AI citations and LinkedIn is pretty remarkable. And that's what I'm going to talk about next, because I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. So let's talk about LinkedIn, because some of the most recent research, as I mentioned, around LinkedIn and AI really caught my attention. And I think it should catch yours too. So as of the recording of this episode, Meltwater recently analyzed 9.5 million AI citations across 6 major AI platforms. And what they found is that LinkedIn was the second most cited source overall in the B2B categories that they studied, behind only YouTube. But that's actually not the statistic that I found most interesting. Here's the one I want you to pay attention to. Of the LinkedIn citations that they analyzed, 75% came from individual members, okay? And only 25% came from company pages. And so if you attend any of my workshops, you hear me talk about this a lot, and it's a question that comes up, is LinkedIn company pages. And we know that most of the attention and algorithm plays on your personal LinkedIn profile and not so much from your company pages. However, that does not mean that you should be disregarding your company pages because company pages will become important. LinkedIn just hasn't created that opportunity yet. But you cannot fall behind on company pages. All I'm suggesting is put most of your emphasis on your personal profile, but in the background, continue to build your company page. Super important. So that is an interesting statistic that most of the citations are coming from people's personal profiles. And that's why we write so much thought leadership for a lot of professionals. And we do post it on their personal profile. But there is no harm in reposting that to your LinkedIn company page as well. And also, more than half of those individual member citations that I referred to came from people with fewer than 10,000 followers. That should tell you something, right? You don't need to have a huge following to be cited in AI from LinkedIn. Okay, so this isn't only about influencers, and it isn't only about people with enormous audiences. This is a really important point. And it isn't only about large firms with huge marketing departments and huge ad spends, right? People with deep expertise in a particular subject are showing up too. And so there was also a separate study from Profound that looked at 1.4 million citations across the 6 AI platforms. And in that study, LinkedIn ranked number 1 for professional queries. Okay. Now, I want to put an important qualifier around all of this. We know that AI is changing rapidly, incredibly quickly. So citation patterns will change as well, and different platforms use different sources. So I would never tell you that posting something on LinkedIn means ChatGPT is automatically going to cite you. But I do think that these studies are telling us something important. Your personalized LinkedIn presence may matter much more in the age of AI than many professionals realize. And so for years, I've been telling our clients, and I've been telling lawyers, mediators, and other professionals not to treat LinkedIn like an online resume. And I think that that advice is even more important now because look at what exists on your personal LinkedIn profile. Your headline tells people what you do. Your about section can explain who you help and what you're known for. Your experience establishes your professional background. Your articles and newsletters demonstrate what you know. And so your posts allow you to consistently talk about the issues and problems that you want associated with your name. So, for example, if I went into AI and I wanted to know about certain topics or even about me, Sylvia Garibaldi, I will find citations from LinkedIn pulled directly. And in fact, on certain topics, without even mentioning my name, I will come up in AI as a resource. And that resource, 9 times out of 10, is connected to what I said on LinkedIn. And they're pulling that citation directly from LinkedIn. Okay. So things are changing quickly, but it's super important to take what I'm saying here and apply it so that you can start seeing the benefits of that. So, as a quick example, imagine that you're a workplace mediator and you want to be known for resolving complex conflict between senior executives. Your LinkedIn headline reflects that. Your About section talks about it. You regularly share your perspective on executive conflict. And then you write about when organizations should bring in a mediator. And you discuss mistakes leaders can make when conflict starts escalating. So, all of these things, believe it or not, will become clear, and you're building a very clear association with your name, with workplace mediation, executive conflict, organizational disputes, and you're not just telling people what you do. You're creating a public body of evidence around what you know, and that's very different from posting, okay? It's very different from posting something like thrilled to attend another conference today, or here's a great photo of our team at this event. And I'm not saying that these posts are wrong, and posting these occasionally are good, and you should sprinkle these in. But once again, if your goal is to build authority, you also need to demonstrate your expertise. And you need to answer those questions. You need to explain those issues. You need to share those observations, right? And you need to talk about the problems that you actually solve. In fact, there's a workplace mediator that we work with. And when we go into AI and we type in top workplace mediator in this location, her name pops up. And we're super proud of that because she's also active on LinkedIn with her social media and the things that she's posting. So this is all connected. It does work, but it absolutely takes consistency. And very quickly, I want to share another finding with you from the Meltwater research. And that was that AI citations tend to favor content that's very specific, useful, structured, and actually answers questions. Okay. Because that's how AI works when it scans the online platforms, right? It's looking for those things: specific, useful, structured, and content that answers questions. So here's what I'd like you to think about for yourself. If AI, or frankly, a potential client, looked at your LinkedIn presence today, would they understand what you're known for? And not just your job title, but what you're actually known for. And I think there's one important lesson here. Don't hide all of your firm's expertise behind the company logo. Your company page still matters, as I said, right? But this research today suggests that the voices of individual professionals matter a lot more on LinkedIn. I want to share something with you that I see come up time and time again. Many professionals I speak to know exactly who they want to attract, but where things break down isn't clarity, it's actually implementation. So they're not sure how to translate that into messaging, how to stay visible, or how to turn that visibility into actual client inquiries. So if this sounds familiar, I created a step-by-step guide to help you work right through this. This free guide walks you through how to define your ideal clients, identify the right referral partners, understand where they're actually looking, including AI, and most importantly, how to turn all of that into consistent action. You can download your free guide at www.sgandassociates.ca/free-guide. Link is also in the show notes. But it's important to keep those company pages updated because, as I said, at any time, things can switch. And, at any time, your company page on LinkedIn could become the focus. So it's super important to keep that updated. But it's also important to note that if you're a legitimate company, you want to have a company page up on LinkedIn, right? Like, think about the big companies and corporations out there. They all have a company page. But I think this research suggests that the voices of us as individual professionals matter significantly. And so it's important that we give consideration to what I've just talked about right now. So let's move on to the next section here. And that is pulling this all together. So we've clarified what you want to be known for, and you've made your messaging more consistent. You've strengthened your personal LinkedIn presence. I think the next step here is to think about something that I call your AI recommendation footprint. So, what do I mean by that? And it's basically the body of information that exists online that connects your name, your expertise, and the problems that you solve. And here's what I want you to understand. This is not about being everywhere. You don't need to appear on 50 different platforms. I think what matters here is that the credible places where you do appear are reinforcing the same story consistently. Okay, so let's continue with the workplace mediator example. So, a LinkedIn profile may say that a mediator specializes in executive and organizational conflict. And this mediator writes about executive conflict. They are interviewed on a podcast about resolving leadership disputes. There is a conference website that lists this professional as a speaker on workplace mediation, and their professional association profile describes their experience in organizational conflict. Now, look at what's happening here. Different sources are connecting their name with the same expertise. And I think that that's a heck of a lot stronger than simply putting on their website, I'm an expert in workplace mediation. Because now there's specific information and there's evidence around that positioning. And some of that evidence is coming from sources that you don't control yourself. And I think that's super important. So we talked a little bit about this before. The outside sources that are talking about you could be other referral partners. It could be a guest article on someone's blog. It could be a media interview. It could be an article that you published. So the goal is not quantity, as I said, it's consistency. And that's important. I hope that's resonating with you. So now I want you to actually test this for yourself, okay? So you can go into any of the AI platforms, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, and start asking questions about you. So begin with something simple with, who is Jane Smith? And then ask, what is Jane Smith known for? What areas of expertise is Jane Smith associated with? What types of clients does Jane Smith typically help? And then take it one step further, right? And ask the kind of question that a potential client might actually ask. Something like, who are experienced workplace mediators in Sydney, Australia? Or who specializes in high net worth divorce in New York City? Or who can help with a complex estate dispute in Toronto? Then look at what comes back. Does AI know who you are? Is the information accurate? And does it understand your specialty? More importantly, does it associate your name with the work that you actually want? Or are you finding that the information is vague, it's outdated, it's incomplete, or maybe it's just simply wrong? So I want to put an important warning around this because you shouldn't be treating one AI answer like a Google ranking. Okay, so if your name appears today, that doesn't mean that you have somehow ranked in AI, right? And if your name doesn't appear, don't panic either, because these answers can change depending on the platform, the wording of the question, the context, and the information available at that moment. And I know this because we test this all the time for our clients in all of these different platforms. And this is exactly what we're seeing, is that there is some inconsistency depending on the platform that you type your question in and what you're actually using, the words, the language that you're using when you're typing that into AI. So what you're really trying to understand, I think, is something bigger. Does the information that exists about you online create a clear and accurate picture of what you want to be known for? And if it doesn't, what is actually missing? So could it be that your positioning isn't clear enough? Or maybe it includes too many things about what you're really good at. Maybe there isn't enough online content curated about you that demonstrates your expertise, because that's something that can happen as well. Or maybe you're not appearing on credible third-party platforms. Maybe you need some more of those sprinkled in. Whatever you discover, please treat it as information, not a score. Just, the goal here isn't to rank number one in ChatGPT. The goal is to build a reputation that AI has enough evidence to understand. Okay, I hope that's making sense. And once you start looking at AI this way, something else becomes very clear. This fourth recommendation engine is not operating in isolation because everything that we've talked about through this series starts feeding into it. And I think that's super important. So now I want to bring this entire series together because these four recommendation engines don't really operate in isolation, as I just said. They actually strengthen one another. So let's talk about recommendation engine one, your clients. You give someone a great experience. They trust you. They talk about you. They recommend you. Maybe they leave a review. Maybe they mention your name to someone else who needs help, right? Recommendation engine number two is your professional network. And this one's an important one because other professionals need to understand what you do. So they need to know what you're known for. They need to refer people to you. They need to invite you to speak. They need to interview you in a podcast. They need to collaborate with you. All of those things will begin once they know more about you. And that creates more visibility around your name. Recommendation engine number three is Google. Now, someone searches for you, or they search for the problem that you solve. And there's more information for them to find: your website, your LinkedIn profile, reviews, articles, professional directories. And so your reputation is starting to become visible online. Recommendation engine number four. So AI has another body of information available to help it understand who you are, what you're known for, what kinds of problems you solve, and what credible information exists about your expertise. So that's why I don't want you to think about AI as replacing Google. And I don't want you to think of AI as replacing referrals either. It's simply another recommendation engine that is becoming part of the way people research professionals. And it's becoming extremely important. And so in many ways, the work that you've already been doing to strengthen the first three recommendation engines can also help strengthen this fourth recommendation engine as well. I think is so important because a great client experience matters. And as we know, strong referral relationships matter as well. Being found on Google is important, but we also know that clear positioning matters. And these are all connected. So instead of asking, how do I market for AI? I think the better question is, am I building a reputation that is clear, that is credible, that is consistent and visible whenever people or technology go looking for someone like me? And this is exactly the work that we do for our clients. We help them get found in these places and build that consistency and that credibility so that professionals become known, trusted, and can ultimately convert that prospect to a client. Because that's what this is all about. Not about chasing four different marketing tactics, but building four different ways for your name to come up when someone needs exactly what you do. So, in essence, the way people find professionals, as I mentioned, is changing very quickly. And AI has added another recommendation engine to the mix. And to be quite frank, none of us knows exactly what this landscape will look like a year or two from now. Really, who knows? But that doesn't mean you need to feel overwhelmed by it. It simply means you need to adapt and start with the things that you can control. So get very clear about what you want to be known for and make sure that that message is consistent across all of those platforms and places where you can be found online. And I think it's important to note that consistently creating the kind of reputation and digital presence that makes you easier to find, understand, and trust is ultimately the goal here. And if you're listening to this series and you're realizing that your positioning isn't clear, or maybe your visibility isn't where you want it to be, or simply not sure how to adapt your marketing as all of this changes, then I'd encourage you to book a consultation call with me, and you'll find the link for the call in the show notes. So feel free to book a call if this is you. So the landscape is changing, but I really believe that there's also huge opportunity now. And so the professionals who start adapting now will be in a much stronger position as the way people search, research, and choose continues to evolve. So that's my message for you today. Thank you so much for joining me in this 4-part series, and I do hope that you found it valuable. See you in the next episode.